Welcome once again to the S.E.M podcast. Jack Bryce and Zack Hewlett are here tonight, joined by our good friend Joe McLean. Joe, what part of the world you're calling from tonight?
We're in Tucson, Arizona.
Tucson, Arizona. Very cool. Well, Joe, have you been listening to the podcast? I didn't even ask you that before we got on here.
No, so I think I didn't know about it until I think you'd emailed me asking if I would be on, and I was like, "Whoa, this is a thing." So yeah, I've definitely been listening, and it's been a blast. I mean, it's been fun hearing old stories, and it's been, for me, it's 15 years January, because I got home January of '08, so it's been 15 years. So it's crazy to think how long, and just so many people you look up to and have memories with. So I don't know. It's been fun for me, and I'm sure you guys have seen some of those results. Have you seen people tuning in and ballooning with people wanting to be on and talk about and so on? So yeah, it's been fun.
Oh, we love it. I'm in the same boat as you. I got home 16 years ago. Last week or week and a half ago. Just boggles my brain a little bit. Jack, you're coming up on what, 18 next month?
No, 17.
Oh, 17. Okay.
Man.
Sorry. Got ahead of myself.
Because I think Zach, I think you were exactly a year before me. And I think Jack, I think I came in when you came out or something like that.
I don't know. You went in the MTC in January?
Yeah, January of '06.
Yep. So you came in you came to Scotland the day I left Scotland. So.
Yep.
High five on the way.
Yep. Yeah. Changing of the guard. Two kids from Arizona.
It's just how it goes, right? One comes in and the other leaves.
Yeah.
All right, Joe. Well, just to remind everybody, we'll talk pre-mission, your decision to serve, and your reaction to getting your call to Scotland. Then we'll go over the mission and come back to life since you've been home. Then we'll go back through the mission. So you're up, my friend.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I know it took me a little bit to get on. I can't remember how long ago you emailed me, but yeah, I'm glad we're finally doing this. It's been a blast hearing stories, and I have such a love for my mission in Scotland. So it's been fun reminiscing a little bit and taking some notes. I kind of thought I would have done more taking notes, but just it's kind of how life is. This has come quick, but no. Yeah, I would just say so. We'll go pre-mission. There was never a time in my life that I didn't think I was going to go on a mission. That was always the plan. I was very fortunate to have a great group of friends in high school that we had a lot of fun, but also helped each other keep standards. And I think we were like 15 guys for 15 that all ended up serving missions.
That's awesome.
That it was just and great friends that still stay in touch with and try to stay in touch with, even though we live far apart and you get lives and families and so on. So I think even my senior year of high school, we had one or two friends that kind of periphery friends that ended up joining the church from interaction with our group of guys, and just kind of were magnets to goodness. And so one of them even ended up serving a mission not that long after. So it was very fortunate and blessed with the group of friends that I had, and always knew that a mission was the plan. It's funny, I think so. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. Been home for my mission 15 years, and I've been working with the young men for probably 8 or 9 of those 10 years. And so we'll talk about going on missions and the importance of friends and all those things. So anyways, that's kind of pre-mission. When my mission call came, I was actually with my family in Disneyland, and
Wow.
And I had a good friend that lived just around the corner from us that was checking the mail for us. So I think Jack, Arizona, it was like Wednesday or Thursday the mail would come, and so we knew it was coming. But got the call on, I don't even know if it was my cell phone at that point in time, my mom's or my cell phone, that the call was there. And so it was a couple days, I think it was 2 or 3 days later, that when I got home, was able to open it. And a few of those guys they were talking about were gone, but the rest of them and big group of friends from the ward all came over to open it. And yeah, I think I, just like everyone else, said Edinburgh.
Yeah.
I think, and I don't know if it was the same for you, Jack, but I think I grew up in Gilbert, Arizona. And a lot of my friends at the time, it was either South America, you were going Brazil, Argentina, Chile, etc., or stateside. And so that in my brain, that was where I was going. I was either going to go stateside or I was going to go speak a foreign language. And I'd taken Spanish, I think, like 5 or 6 years in junior high or high school. And so I remember putting on my application, it's like, I think it was, how confident would you be speaking another language? And it was 1 through 5. And for some reason I put 4, and I always feel like that's the reason I didn't get called to a South American country, because I wasn't completely confident in my abilities. But yeah, it wasn't even in my brain, but obviously was elated and really excited for the opportunity to be going to Scotland, not knowing a whole lot about it, but then digging in as we all did to learn more about Scotland as we figured out that that's where we're going. So that was kind of the pre-mission leading up to going to Scotland.
I love it.
So okay, so we'll jump to post mission. So I had a really difficult time, and I guess in my mind, the way I'm framing a lot of this conversation is I think of my family, that this is a cool opportunity to be able to speak for an hour and a half about my mission, but also all these young men that some of these stories that I'm going to tell, I've told multiple times, to people about going on a mission. So I'll try and be candid on some of this, but I had a really hard time when I was coming back from my mission. I think we flew home on a Wednesday, and the next morning I had an 8 a.m. class at community college.
Gosh.
Like it was we knew I had to get home at a certain time to be able to start school, and I think I missed Tuesday's class, but was going to be starting Thursday. So got home from Wednesday, and then 8 a.m. the next day. And I think it was like a public speaking class, so it's not one you could just sit back. Like you had to be pretty engaged. Yeah, and that way it wasn't so much school, but just you're in such a pressure cooker, in such a way of living on the mission, that getting back was just so hard to me. I'll talk about James McCabe, because we both grew up in Gilbert and we're in the same group and so on. But I remember the first weekend we were home, one of my best friends, one of those 15 guys, we all went over to his apartment. He lived by the Mesa Temple, and we were just hanging out with old friends, and there was probably 1 or 2 new people there, and they were playing Rock Band, which was a new thing when I got back. And I just remember the feeling that it was the biggest waste of time, like, imaginable. Like, I just felt uncomfortable being there. I think I left his apartment at probably 8 or 8:30, just because I was like, I just gotta go. And this is kind of this, like, and looking back, it's embarrassing, but I'm trying to be a little candid. I remember driving to a Walmart parking lot, and I called James McCabe, because we'd both gotten home a couple days ago, and I said, James, like, what are you up to? I left this. I don't know. What are you doing? Can I hang out? And he's like, hey, I'm hanging out with this girl that I knew from before my mission. Like, I can't, like, you got this, man. And so I'm sitting there Walmart parking lot thinking I can't go home. It's 8:30. My parents are going to think I'm weird if I come home right now. I'm not going back to my friend's house. So I sat in a Walmart parking lot in my car and listened to conference talks for maybe an hour and went home. And I say that just, it took me a little while to get used to life again. And I think I like to think that part of that is because I was like all in on my mission and wanted to be valiant and so on. And that's probably where some of my weirdness and why it took a little while for me to find a wife, because it took a little while for that to wear off. But I guess after that it wasn't any significant stories other than just being really structured. And I remember my family making fun of me because I was obsessed with making things clean and having a schedule and so on. But eventually that kind of wore off. That was like the first couple of days. But if we really go post mission, so I did community college for a little while and then transferred down to U of A. My mom and dad grew up in Tucson, so I ended up going down to U of A. I always liked business, so studied business management. Didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do, but my grandpa and uncles had a financial planning business, financial planning and insurance, and so I kind of always thought that was something that I was going to do. And then my junior year of college, I took a winter class that was the business of college sports. And I'd always grown up a big sports fan. I played baseball and football in high school. And it just kind of blew my mind that other than being an athlete or a coach, that there was this world that you could work in sports. And so it was an adjunct professor. His name is Lee DeLeon. And I think I got the highest grade in the class. And then like the next day, started an internship with Lee at U of A in what's called the Wildcat Club, which is the fundraising arm of the athletics department. And then I did another internship in our ticket office at the same time. So was down at U of A kind of doing that. And it kind of switched gears in my brain where I was like, oh man, I could do this. Like I could make money working in sports. I guess at the same time, what was going on is being like all in the weirdness thing. Like I was ready to get married the day I got home. Like not the day I got home, but like I was ready to find my wife. Right. Like that's
right.
Your exit interview, when you leave, and your stake president when you get home is find a wife and start moving on. So I kind of, looking back, and I know there's people that have gone a lot longer, but for me, it ended up being 5 years, and one by one, seeing those 15 friends get married that even came back a year later, and seeing mission friends that would get married come back. So that was kind of hard for me, being so ready to get married and move on and find my wife with college and so on too. So that's kind of going on at the same time. Let's see. I graduated from U of A in 2010, and my first job was working for the Phoenix Suns. They were going into a lockout, so we were. I was on their sales staff, which Zack, we've connected and talked about, and have some of those same.
That was a crazy time in sports. My goodness.
Yeah. So I was doing sales for the Phoenix Suns, and we were selling season tickets. I guess so. Phoenix Suns. I'll just for our British friends or people from other countries, it's a professional basketball team, and we were selling season tickets for a season that might not even happen, and so it was kind of an interesting time. But I look back, and so many of the experience I had on my mission prepared me for that. Like I know a lot of people have talked about the hammer time and that period of time in the mission, and just reporting and return a report, and like I was well prepared for whatever they were gonna have us do in the NBA, and it was pretty competitive. I think they basically hire 15 people and promote 2 of them, after 6 to 9 months, and I was one of those. That ended up getting promoted. I was working and then worked with the Suns for just about 2 years. And at that time, I'm gonna try and get a little quicker so we can get actually to the mission stuff. But about that same time, I had met Nicole, who's my wife, and we met on a blind date.
Nice.
I had gotten to the point where I was like, whatever, I'm just gonna have fun. I've been trying so hard, and of course, it was one of those times where when you're not expecting it, that those things happen in our life. So I think my brother, who had gotten home from his mission at this time, he's 2 years younger than me, him and 3 or 4 of his friends were going on a group date and said, "Oh, Joe, you could go." And I was like, "I'll come, but I don't have anyone to take." And they're like, "Oh, well, you can take this girl. So-and-so went out with her a little while ago and she's pretty fun." So she's 5 years younger than me. So I probably wouldn't have asked her out at that point in time, because I would have thought I was getting a little too close to high school age. But I was working for the Phoenix Suns. She was finishing cosmetology school, and we got married in January of 2013. And I joke with her a little bit because at the time I was kind of in transition. I was leaving the Suns, and we were going to be going to Albuquerque to work for the University of New Mexico Athletics Department. And so I was unemployed and we were homeless when we got married, because we didn't know where we were living, and I didn't have a job at the point.
That's way to do it.
Yeah, good way to do it. It took a lot of faith. I give my father-in-law a hard time that he let Nicole get married to someone that didn't have a job and didn't know where they were going to be living. So we got home from our honeymoon and moved straight to Albuquerque. We spent like 2 days to try and find an apartment. And then we ended up being in Albuquerque for 2 years. I got my master's in sports administration while we're out there. And I worked in the athletics department selling premium seating, so suites and club seats and so on for our football and basketball teams. And I always had stayed in touch with people from Tucson. And so about 2 years later, got a call from someone that I known from Arizona, and asked if I'd be entered a position in the Wildcat Club, which is where I'd interned as a student. And that's where we've been ever since. We've been back for 8 years, and I work in our athletics department. I initially did major gifts, which is basically asking people for money, which people kind of laugh about that, but the mission's like a perfect prepare for that, right? Like, you're meeting people and you're asking them to give up everything, and we meet with people in their houses or in their offices and ask them to give up some of their money to support a good cause and something they're passionate about. So that's kind of where we're at now. I've been there for 8 years, oversee our annual giving team. That's something maybe Zack would know, but it's basically donations to the athletic department, and do some different things with data and analytics for our revenue for the department and projections and so on. So yeah, that's kind of me professionally. And then we have 3 little boys. McKay was born in Albuquerque, and then we have Hunter, who's 6, and Brigham, that is 4, and 1 on the way. So lot of testosterone in this house, a lot of energy. I feel bad for Nicole. I mean, literally 40 minutes ago, we were all wrestling, trying to, a lot of energy in the house. So, but I love them. They're fun. They're a blast, fun kids. They're playing sports, and obviously busy schedules with everything else, and so on. So,
do you know gender of number 4?
It is a little girl.
Hey.
Yeah.
Your wife will be happy about that, and then you'll have no more kids.
Yeah, so that was a big one. It's a little bit of a gap. There'll be about 4.5 years, and we got to the point where we'd be fine with a little boy, but obviously I've been praying for a little girl to join the family too, and help even the boys out a little bit. So she's going to be a little princess that gets well protected from her older brothers.
That's exciting.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, yeah, what a journey. I have a really good friend that's in the athletic department at UNM, and
Okay.
I think he just missed you though. So we'll have to talk off air in regards to that. But
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Cool.
All right, Joe. Well, take us back to the mission. You can start the MTC, and if you like, or you can go straight to Scotland.
Okay, we'll do a couple quick ones from the MTC. So James McCabe and I flew out. We're both from Gilbert. We flew out together, stopped in Atlanta, and then ended up at the MTC. I want to say we were only there for like 10 days. They were like compressing the schedule, and so we didn't have any like gym time. So we got to the point where we felt pretty cooped up.
Jeez.
Which yeah, it's all we knew, but we had fun. It was a great group. President Winwood was the MTC president, and just we had a lot of fun. I think that is a common thing that, you know, these young elders get together and have a little too much fun. But the one story I wanted to share, and this will be a little bit of a theme for later too. So I had been to the MTC for 3 or 4 days, and I got a notice, or President Winwood or one of the other people said, "Hey, we need to talk to you about your medical records." And I was like, "Okay." And apparently I had missed a shot or something, which I don't know how that happens, because you're meeting with doctors and so on. So I was like, okay, that's fine. So they have me go into this room, and I have a history of fainting from like drawing blood and whatever it may be. And so getting this shot, there's this Asian doctor that's going to give me the shot. And I recall he doesn't really speak English. And so I'm in the MTC, I'm 4,000 miles from home, and I have to get this shot, which I wasn't worried about the shot. It's just kind of in my brain, this whatever natural thing that happens. And so they're giving me the shot, and I pass out. And I remember waking up, and there's this Asian guy over the top of me, and I have like no idea where I am.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, I remember one of the MTC presidency coming, and it just kind of a weird experience, and that's kind of a precursor for later too. But yeah, I think it's called vasovagal or something like that, because it's happened to me multiple times. When we're having our second, Nicole got an epidural, and I got all woozy, and so Nicole's going through labor, and the nurse and doctor, I'm like leaning over, and they come up and they're, "Oh, are you okay? Are you doing okay? Can we get you some apple juice or something?" And so Nicole's in labor and just had an epidural, and they're whatever, it's taking care of me, the guy that can't handle a needle or whatever. So yeah, that was the MTC. It went by really quick. I remember we went tracting while we were out there. Elder Maddock was my MTC companion. I think Elder Bryce, that we had switches. They did switches and companionships, and so we were there. So that was kind of MTC. Fast forward a little bit, train up to Edinburgh. We stayed a night at an Airbnb, and kind of had forgotten about. That's one cool thing about this podcast, is some of the things you forget about until you hear other people talking about. But I think James and I had stayed up a little too late, just talking and getting caught up and talking about where we're going to be going and all those things. So MTC the next day, found out, well, I think I was going to say my group. So I think the ones I can remember: Elder Jensen, Elder Harlow, Elder Maddock, Elder Wilcoxon, Elder McCabe, and Elder Price. And I think there was another one or two, but it was a good group of guys coming in. And trainer was Elder McBride, and we were going to kill winning in the Irvine ward. Yeah. And I was there. So I guess I would just kind of talk briefly about time, and then I'll go on a few stories. But I was there for 6 months with Elder McBride, Elder Fisher, and Elder Gregerson. And I think it was
which Fisher?
Devin.
Okay.
Yeah, which I haven't talked to him in a while, but he's one that I would love to hear from and have on. And he's more your contemporaries.
He was my MTC group. I've been in touch with him, and
come on, Devin.
He'll come on in the future. He's in the midst of building the new house, so we'll get him.
Okay. Yeah. And it with McBride 3 months, and then 6 weeks with Fisher and Gregerson. So the other one, and this is a story I've told multiple times, but my first day in the mission field is one that I'll never forget. And I've probably told this story to people going on their mission, whether it's my siblings, my brothers or sisters, or brother-in-laws, or young men, because we left the MTC. We had to take a train to Glasgow and then a train down to Irvine. And we literally all we had was enough time to drop off our bags at the apartment, and then we had to go to a dinner appointment, because I think we had a dinner appointment and then there was a ward activity that night. So Elder Mason, Elder Wilkie picked me up, and me and Elder McBride up from the train station. They were the zone leaders at the time, and dropped off my bag. And I think at this point in time, it's, I don't know, 4:30, 5 o'clock, which in January starts to be almost like it's dark. It's like, yeah. It's well dark at this point in time. And I remember Elder McBride talking a little bit about who we were going over to members for dinner, and we were riding on a double-decker bus for the first time. So I think it was like a 30-minute bus ride, and the bus was packed, so we couldn't even sit next to each other. He was like, "Okay, you go sit back there." So we've probably been on the bus for like 20 minutes. And someone gets on the bus, and something along the lines of, "Hey, can anyone help me? I really need help." And he looks homeless, and he comes in. I'm like, "Do not look at me. Do not look at me. I do not want to talk to this guy." Well, he goes and sits next to Elder McBride, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what is this guy doing?" And I didn't think that much of it, but because he sat down and I couldn't hear him. But then Elder McBride pushes the dinger. We're getting off at the next stop, and says, "Oh, okay, Elder, we're getting off." And so we get off, and Elder McBride's like, "Okay, hey, we weren't supposed to get off right then, but I didn't want to have to deal with this guy right now. I've met him before, and we've been to his house and whatever." So we start walking, because he's like, "Well, we probably got about 10-minute walk now, because we had to stop a little early." Well, the next stoplight, the guy gets off the bus and comes walking looking for us. And he looked like, I don't know, he was maybe in his 30s, but he looked like a lot of Scottish people that had issues with drugs. And he came up to talk to us, and he's talking about demons in his apartment and just needing money and wanting us to come over. And I was like, "What is going on right now? Like, is this what my life is?"
Welcome to Scotland.
And I remember Elder McBride did a good job. I don't think I said a single word. Just like, you're taking care of this. And I think he got him to go away a little bit and said, "Hey, we've been over to his house. I don't know if he's mentally stable or whatever." And so that's my experience walking to dinner. And we go to the Williams home, which we went to the Williams. I was there 6 months. We probably went every Thursday that 6 months. And I just love the Williams. They are the greatest, older couple that just love the missionaries. And so we're sitting and visiting for a little bit. And about, I don't know, we maybe hadn't been sitting down for five minutes to start eating. And they started asking me about my family. And I just remember, like, man, there's a lot of stuff going on in my brain right now, and a lot of emotions. And I started to get a little emotional, but I didn't want them to see it. So I said, "Hey, I need to go to the restroom." So I remember sneaking off to the restroom and just thinking, what did I get myself into? Like, I am 4,500 miles from home. It is dark, and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And yeah, just starting to feel a little emotional, missing my family. And right then and there, I just remember having the feeling like, "Hey, this isn't going to be my mission. Like, I don't want this feeling. Like, I'm all in. really kind of the President Hinckley forget yourself and go to work experience I had like night one. Like, I don't want to have feelings of being homesick or lonely. And so it was a forget yourself and go to work moment, like right away. And I remember going back and like, it was fine. But I just remember that and have told that story a lot because it is so true that there's so many different experiences you have. And a lot of crazy experiences that if you just dwell on home, I could see how it could be really hard. So yeah. And I don't know if you guys had a similar experience. I know there's lots of other ones, but I remember night one, crazy guy talking about demons in his house, thinking this was going to be my life for the next 2 years.
No,
Yeah.
Jack kept my first night pretty even keel. It was
that's good.
It was darker than sin as we're driving to Peterhead, and I don't know what time it was.
Yeah.
I just knew it was dark and it was cold outside.
Well, because it was like January, February for all three of us when we got there. So
right. Yep.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So kind of crazy. And then luckily the zone leaders picked us up. So Mason Wilkie picked us up and took us to the chapel and ended up meeting some members. And I had other weird-ish experiences, but I just remember that one was like a slap in the face. Welcome to Scotland. Yeah. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about Elder McBride. So Elder McBride was great. Like I think we worked great together, and he was such a hard worker and taught me about loving members. And I think the lucky thing for me is when I got there, like we had a pretty built up teaching pool. Like we were teaching right away. We had a young girl that was scheduled for baptism in a couple of weeks when I first got there. And we were pretty busy teaching, which I know is not always everyone's experience in Scotland. But for me, it was like, it almost set like an expectation that this is what Scotland was like. And one of the things for me, I think after it was only like a week or something, Elder McBride got sick and lost his voice. And so after like a week, and I can't remember how long it lasted. It might have been only a day. In my brain, I built it up as more than a day. But it was like I was teaching everything because he lost his voice and couldn't talk. And so we had a decent teaching pool, and I was all of a sudden thrown in and had to teach right away, which was a good experience and cool for me.
Do you know if Elder McBride did that on purpose, or
I could see that being a training tactic that Pilkington passed down from him? Like,
I could see Pilkington doing that. Yeah, that's true.
Just act like you can't talk. Then they have no option but to teach and talk at the doors when you're chapping and so on. So
it's too funny.
Yeah, we worked great together. And yeah, we had, within the first 2 weeks, a young girl that had been scheduled for baptism, and it had a decent teaching pool and had fun finding some people from media referrals and chapping into people and so on. So the other thing I remember right away too, and this was, I guess everyone has their own story of being introduced to the Scottish language. But I remember my first ward council. So this was the first Sunday. It was Bishop Govins, and just not understanding a word he was talking about and asking me, "Oh, where are you fair?" And I was like, "Excuse me?" And he'd be, "Ken, what I'm talking about?" And I'm like, "Gosh, I am so lost. Like, I have no idea." And anyone that knows Bishop Govins, he could have a pretty thick accent. And there was a lot of people in the Irvine ward that could have a pretty thick accent. So
that's great.
Yeah. Let's see. Anything else? Elder McBride, we did some fun things too. I think as a district, went to the Isle of Arran, which is just off the coast there, and had a great district. I think Elder Rhodes, Elder Noble, Elder Bird, and Elder Jensen ended up being in the district. Sister Kenny, Sister Lewis, I know was on. So I listened to Sister Kenny. So just a lot of good times, but mainly with Elder McBride. Just remember teaching right away and just working hard and really helping people try and progress. And that kind of filtered on with Elder Fisher and Elder Gregerson. Elder Fisher, I just remember having fun with and getting to know members. So I feel like I was kind of early on the train for working with members in the wards, because the girl that we baptized was from a part member family, and I think we had another referral early on from members. So yeah, I think that was main things from Kilwinning, my first area. It was also my first 6 months. We had that multi-mission conference down in Preston. You remember that, Zach?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Go and listen to President Elder Nelson at the time and going to the temple. So that was pretty cool, and definitely a fun memory.
Yeah, that had to have been pretty early in your mission. It was like what, March or April timeframe, I think.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, so. that sounds right. So let's see. So then I was in Kilwinning for 6 months, and during that time was with those companionships, and then from there I went to Dumfries, which Jack, I know you were down in Dumfries, right?
Yeah, that's where I started.
That's where you started. How long were you down there?
4.5.
4.5.
Yep.
That's cool. I was down there. It was either for 3. I think it might have been only for 3 months. I was with Elder Zacharias at first, and was there for 6 weeks, and then trained Elder Jones down in Dumfries. Jack, do you remember Kate?
Oh yeah,
definitely. Kate was great. This loved the missionaries and was just a blast.
She ran the hood too.
Yeah.
It's like the matriarch of that neighborhood.
Yeah. She would give Elder Zacharias a hard time. Like, I just remember her, like, she would and she would give up, like, she just had a good relationship with the missionaries and could be cheeky with them and, you know, tell us to sit up straight, but also just loved having the missionaries in her home and inviting the spirit and so on. So Dumfries, Elder Zacharias, and Elder Jones. Elder Jones was from Palmyra, I believe. And I think he's still up there. I looked him up not that long ago, but I don't remember serving together around each other that much other than training. We had there was a senior couple down there, the Andersons, while we were there, which was cool. They lived downstairs from us and would feed us dinner every Sunday night if we didn't have a dinner appointment with members. And it was, at that point in time, it was cool because she would email my mom and, you know, she would say, whatever, the senior couples have a different standard. So she would like talk to my mom every now and then. Oh, I was just talking to your mom about you and so on. I think that was also the time that I ended up getting whatever the we would call like a national parks pass, but like the castle pass for Scotland. I ended up getting that because the Andersons liked going to castles, so we would drive up to zone conference or district meeting, and then on P days we would go tour castles. So that's one of my memories with Elder Zacharias, was going and touring castles and him taking pictures of him being in a guillotine or whatever at different places.
Jeez.
The weird thing about Dumfries is you're so far away. I'm guessing it was still the Edinburgh zone. Was your district in Edinburgh too?
That was the Selkirk district.
Selkirk district. Okay.
Yeah, they would actually come down to Dumfries for district meetings.
Okay.
And we would go up for zone meetings.
So I think all of our district meetings except 1 or 2 ended up being at Edinburgh. So, you know, once a week you were driving a decent amount to get to Edinburgh. And anytime you would do exchanges for districts within the district or zone, there was lots of driving in between, which was cool because it's beautiful countryside, but just meant a lot of time on the road. I can't remember which companion it was, but one of the funny chapping stories, and I'm sure we've all had something very, very similar, but it was either Elder Zacharias or Elder Jones. I'm pretty sure we were in Dumfries, that knocked on the door, and a basically naked 300-pound Polish man in just a Speedo answered the door. And I remember I might have been Elder Z, because I remember him trying to carry on a conversation with him, and I was like, this guy shouldn't even answer the door, and he speaks Polish. Like, we are not having a conversation with this guy right now.
Oh my gosh. That's too funny.
Yeah. But yeah, Dumfries was good. I remember the ward being pretty small and them not having anyone that could play the piano. And I don't play the piano great, but I remember that was the only area in my mission that I ended up playing the piano in the ward for sacrament meeting. And I honestly don't remember how I did it, because I'm not really that good, but I guess I could get enough just to play the top line or something for some of the hymns for the ward.
That's impressive.
Yeah. But yeah, there were some cool castles down there too, down near Dumfries. And I remember we went down to the border at one point. There was a big tartan shop down there, whatever, too. So I think that was Dumfries, for the most part. From Dumfries, I went up to Dundee, and I served in the Liff ward. And at that point in time, it was in the Liff ward. It was, I think, Elder Goodwin and myself. So Elder Goodwin was my first companion there. I think we were whitewashing, and I can't remember who was in there before us, but we were there with Elder Hess and Elder Borders. And I want to say we stayed that companionship for 3 months. And this is the time. I guess the other thing I'll say in Dumfries is I remember that was the time that I probably knocked the most doors on my mission, because in Kilwinning we had a really good teaching pool, and we had a lot of times when we would knock on doors. But Dumfries, I remember with Elder Zacharias and Elder Jones, a lot of chapping, and there's a lot of little towns that I remember having to drive to do finding down in Dumfries. And I guess the reason I bring that up is this is kind of the point in time where with the transition from President Vriens to President Fredrick, and really member missionary work, the focus on member missionary work really started to take off. And this was the Dundee zone. I'm pretty sure it was President Watson was one of the ones that said, I don't want missionaries knocking on doors, which I remember when we heard that was like, well, what are we gonna do? Like, and that's exactly what he wanted, right? He wanted us to think different and to start working with members. So I remember that 4.5 months in Dundee, just growing such a love and such a relationship with the members in Dundee, and partially because that was our directive from mission president and zone leaders and district leaders and the state president. But it was also the holiday times, right? So it was Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's. So I remember we did the 12 days of Christmas. I think we picked like 4 families in the ward, and the 4 of us, Elder Hess, Elder Borders, Elder Good, and myself, did the 12 days of Christmas for those families. And I remember the first day that we did it, because we kind of thought like, oh crap, it's 12 days till Christmas. We delivered enzymes for the first day, so that was probably our lamest 12 days of Christmas gifts was the enzyme on day 1. But then we kind of started it and had a lot of fun. And I remember little kids and some of the families trying to catch us when we were dropping off. But just a lot of time serving the people, getting to know the people. A lot of names people have already talked about, but the Keoghs were both in that ward. John and Don and Charlie and Sheila, and we had the Campbells in that ward. And what's funny is, so one of those best friends that I was talking, one of those 15 guys, Eric Pugmire, his brother had married someone from Scotland. And
wow.
she was from the Dundee ward. So it was the Campbell's daughter, Beth, had married one of my best friend's brothers. And so I ended up being in the ward, and I remember they had been to Arizona, so they knew they knew the Pugmire. So I'd spent plenty of long nights and lots of time with. And her sister Anna, I remember one of the times being at their house, and she was on the phone. Was like, "Oh, it's Beth. She's calling from Arizona," and just like threw me the phone, like, "Oh, hey, here, talk to someone from Arizona." So that was cool. But we just, I know we had a few investigators at that time, and one of them was Mike Longmuir, who owned an auto body shop, I believe. And had been investigating for a while, if I remember right. But I remember during that time, just spending a lot of time with him, and I remember writing in my journal about just wanting to help him progress towards baptism and being excited every time that he was at church or making progress. So I think that when I think of Dundee, that really it was like member work to the extreme. And I think one of the cool things, so President Watson, is that right? President Watson was the Dundee?
Yeah, Daryl Watson.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Daryl Watson. So there was a general priesthood meeting, I want to say it around state conference, and he invited Elder Hess and I to speak at the general priesthood meeting about missionary work. So I remember that being a cool experience of, as missionaries being asked to speak in one of their meetings, and just kind of goes to, he was all in on missionary work, and starting to see the fruits of that in Dundee. Dundee is also where I got my license. So I remember all of the stuff, having to take the tests and the stress of paying lots of money to take tests in Dundee, and having to pay for private lessons for a period of time. But I passed both. But I passed both first time, so I must have been doing something right.
Nice. You and I should start a club, because I did the same thing.
Hey, there we go. I remember feeling like it was a big deal back then, and for a long time I kept my license in my wallet. I don't know where it is now, but I think it's somewhere.
I did the same thing too, and then I went to Vegas and lost my wallet somewhere. So I was a little bummed about that, and I have no idea how to get my license back, except to go back and twist somebody's arm.
Then they'll probably make you take the test again too.
I'd be all for that. Sign me up. Let's just throw me in the right side of the car, and let's go back around some corners and do some of the crazy stuff.
I remember that, like, having to back around like a round corner and not be more than like 18 inches from the curb or something, that being like the most ridiculous thing. But
it really was, because I remember thinking about it, and I was like, this is illegal in the United States. You can't back around a corner. Why in the world are we doing this?
Yeah.
But rules are rules, I suppose. Yeah, it was something, but that was quite an experience.
Yeah. I loved driving in Scotland. Like, I remember that was something that was really cool for me. And other than Kilwinning, my first 6 months, I drove the rest of my mission.
Wow.
Which was kind of cool, which will lead to this next story. So, and this is kind of encapsulates really my whole mission. But I want to say, do you remember Elder McClure?
Mm-hmm.
I want to say in Kilwinning, in probably my first 6 weeks, we all played soccer all the time, right? Like that was a thing. And I remember zone soccer. I didn't have boots, right? Like I didn't have cleats. And so Elder McClure let me have an old pair of boots. Like, I think he was leaving soon, and let me have an old pair of boots. Well, I wore them a couple of times because as missionaries were cheap, and that's something we did all the time. But it was in my first 3 months that, because of wearing small boots, playing soccer all the time, I ended up getting an ingrown toe nail on my I think on my right foot. And one of the frustrating things about medicine in Scotland is you go somewhere and you get on a list, right? And you wait until your name is up and you can have the procedure done, right? So I remember, I don't know if I ever got on a list in Kilwinning because I was just like, it'll go away. It's not that bad. But Dumfries, I remember like, all right, this is pretty painful and not going away. And so going to the hospital or whatever and getting on the list to be able to get a procedure to get my ingrown toenail fixed. Well, of course, you move, right? And so I'd move and I'd have to get on a list again. And so I remember in Dundee, getting on a list again. And of course, you're still like, everyone still plays soccer. And so mainly because one, I love sports and athletics, I'd still want to participate. But afterwards, like I would just be in pain and it was probably making things worse. And I got to the point where I was like, I'll play goalie. Just so I wasn't kicking the ball as much. But it had been, so at this point in time, Dundee, it's almost a year. So it's probably been 8 or 9 months that I've had this ingrown toenail. And I didn't say anything to, Sister Fredrick, just because like, it's not a big deal. I'll figure it out. So I bring it up because I got to the point where we ended up hiring a private podiatrist to come and work on my toe for me. And for some reason, he was going to come to our apartment to do it. And so he comes to our apartment on some random morning, and I'm with Elder Goodwin at the time. And he starts, I'm in a chair in our family room. And he starts getting out his tools and he's starting to have to cut into my toe a little bit or something. And I think Elder Goodwin had just gone to the bathroom or something. And going back to the Asian doctor in the fainting thing. So I'm on one of those chairs that doesn't have a side. And so he starts working on my toe and it's painful and it's like swollen. And I have pictures, but I won't show it because it's pretty gross. But if anyone really wants to, I can send it to him. Well, I end up fainting. And so I fall over and I end up kicking the table, like the coffee table in our area, with my left foot and making my left foot like cracking the toenail and it's bleeding. And I remember Goodwin coming down and just hearing a thud and being like, what just happened to my companion? Like this guy just is trying to attack my companion or something. So he didn't fix it. Like whatever it did made it worse because now I had my right toe that was from kicking a football. Now I had a left toe because like when I fainted, I kicked a table and now I have ingrown toenails on both of my feet.
Oh man. Gosh. That's terrible.
And so the private podiatrist didn't fix anything. And I remember still being on the list in Dundee. And then it wasn't really until the last 6 months of my mission. I went to Inverness and then I ended up going back to Irvine. And it wasn't until like the last 3 to 6 months of my mission that I was able to get on the list and get it fixed. So all of this time, because you're in Dundee, you get on a list and then you move and then you get on a list and then I move again. And I was finally in a place long enough at that point in time. And maybe, I don't know, maybe I did end up saying something at some point and that's why I ended up staying in Irvine longer. But yeah, I just remember feeling bad for Goodwin, feeling bad for my toes, and also this weird experience of this private podiatrist being in our apartment in Dundee. And so anyways, that goes back to like my weird thing with blood and fainting. And it hasn't always been that bad. Like I'll get blood drawn now and I'll be just fine. But I guess when you add some stress into the situation, it can make it worse.
That experience reminded me, I had completely forgot because I had ingrown toenails early on in the mission. Jack can probably attest to it, but mine were pretty bad. And then after the 3 months we were together in Peterhead, I don't know how. I don't remember getting on any list or anything, but I remember going to a specialist to get it fixed, and it happened like the same day. So I don't know how I got so lucky, but I can't believe that you dealt with that almost your entirety of your mission. So I'm feeling your pain for
Oh
you,
man,
Joe.
I was getting on the wrong list or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
what I did because I like walked up to the high street in Dunfermline, knocked on a door, and said, "Hey, can you fix this toe?" And they took me in. I remember the person like sticking me with a nasty needle in my toe, and they're like, "Can you feel that?" And I'm like, "Well, not anymore," because it went numb. And then they fixed it, and I was good. But if I had to deal with that the entirety of the mission, like I would have been a much more crabby person. I can tell you that. So I don't know how you did that. Jeez.
It was a long time, and I tell people I came back a changed man, obviously because of mission, but I also didn't come back with either toenail because it's been gone. It's been gone ever since. Like they said that if you didn't whatever kill the root, it was going to come back the same way. So I said get rid of it. So, anyways, we joke about with my boys every now and then that I'm the weird guy that doesn't have any big toenails, but it's because I left them in Scotland.
Yeah, there you go. It was a sacrifice.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Crazy.
I'm trying to think. So anything else Dundee? And I remember being cool going over to St. Andrews, and that being fun memories. We similar, just right, being so involved with the ward. I remember going to Elders Quorum activity to like a bar to play snooker with the Elders Quorum. So I remember that being kind of a unique experience. I think Elder Hess and I like won. I think we beat some of the members there though, which they were pretty upset about that these two Americans were beating them in snooker. But I remember
you said, "What's the rules?" And they said you hit this ball in the pocket. You're like, "Cool, I can do that."
We're playing pool, right? We're playing pool. Yeah, it's just different balls and different.
Just a big pool table.
Huge pool table.
That's right.
Yeah. But some of my best memories and favorite people are from that Liff ward, and Mark and Angela Veal were another one that my family ended up coming and picking me up, and I remember we stayed with them for a couple days. And Mark's one that still to this day will send messages every now and then on Facebook and catch up, and just fun people. The Keoghs had band that was going on his mission, so they just had that missionary zeal and spirit, and with us focusing on member missionary work, I remember just challenging people to find people and to who could they know. And I think Ben had left on his mission, and Elder Hess and I went over to the Keoghs, Charlie and Sheila, and had a lesson. And basically they were like talking about who could get a baptism first, Ben or the Keogh family, and just how like excited they were about it. And like, it was just a fun time. There was just such a fire around members and missionaries and being involved. And I love their family so much. And that's another one. When my family came by, we went and visited. And so the only other one I think in Dundee is when Elder Oaks came. So I remember going, Brother Campbell, which is the dad of Beth, who I knew from Arizona, gave us a road over and going and see Elder Oaks. And I remember that being another cool one. Were you home at that point in time, Zach, or did you get to meet Elder Oaks? Yeah,
I think Elder Oaks came. I want to say it was like probably March of 2007, and I went home in January. So I just missed that.
Yeah. Well, I think that was me, because I think Elder Holland just came a couple months after me. So
oh, really?
I think that was my missing Elder Holland, which was was one of my favorites. So I will have to hear from someone. I don't know if I've heard that one, someone talking about that on a podcast yet, but
that Elder Holland had been there.
Yeah.
You have to listen to Christian Lucas's, because he was he got pulled over going over 100 miles an hour in the mission van, and Elder Holland drove by in the mission president's car.
Oh my gosh!
While he's getting put in the back of a police car. So.
Oh yeah, I haven't listened to Christians yet. So that's a good one. That's a good one to look forward to.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So that was Dundee. From there, I went up to Inverness with Elder Fissler, which I know he was on not that long ago.
Yeah.
And we were only together like one transfer. and that was my shortest area on my mission. And we covered two different wards. There was an Inverness ward, and then there was the Invergordon branch, which met in a museum, which was a crazy experience. Meeting in a museum, like Sunday school was just separated by like displays in the museum from Relief Society or something, and sacrament being in this kind of general room. But yeah. I'm trying to let me think what else. Inverness, obviously had to go see Loch Ness. And probably did that a couple times. I think the thing that I remember most was just trying to be productive with Elder Fissler. And at that point in time, we had started reporting just how many lessons we taught, whether it was member, investigator, joint teacher, so on. And so I think there was a week we taught like 30 lessons, which I remember being really, really proud of and feeling like we busted our butt to try and teach 30 lessons. And a good portion of those were members from Invergordon or Inverness. We would take Birdie with us on joint teaches. So those 6 weeks, I got to know him a little bit, obviously not as well as some people, but a lot of just funny things with Bert. There was we had to go to up in Thurso, right? I don't know are missionaries in Thurso at all in your time in the mission?
Yeah. Early on. Yeah.
So I don't remember anyone being up in Thurso in my time there, and I didn't serve up in the Aberdeen zone very much, but in our those 6-8 weeks I was in Inverness, there was someone that was going to be getting baptized up in Thurso. And so they were solely taught by members and the ward mission leader. And I remember going up for the baptismal interview, and then going up a couple days later for the baptism.
Wow.
And so that was kind of a cool thing, driving up there and being on that coast and being a part of that experience with the members literally doing everything, which was kind of cool to see.
Yeah, that is pretty unique.
Yeah. The two other, I'll just do two more quick ones in Inverness, and then we'll go to my last area. So one, different episodes, people have talked about things they learned from President Vriens or President Fredrick. I was in Inverness when one of the, I guess, most impactful advice I've gotten from a leader, and especially from President Fredrick, we had interviews, and I just remember him challenging me to be more vocal, right? And I think naturally a lot of us sit back and the example that he gave was something like, in zone conference, when someone asks a question, everyone knows the answer, but we don't need Elder Martin to answer every time. and just talking about how like being a leader can sometimes just be vocal and just being willing to answer questions. And I think about that a lot from my time as a missionary, from my time in school, in congregations, and when we go to Sunday school now, all that dead time when no one's answering. I feel like more often, because of that experience, I speak up and share insights. And I know it helps the teacher too. Like that's what they're not trying to sit in silence. But I think that's helped me in my work life. It's helped me in church. It's helped me in school develop better relationships with professors. And it's such a simple thing, but I just remember the way we talked about it in interviews. I remember that having a big impact on me. And I don't know if it's helped me significantly, but I think it's made a big impact on my life moving forward. And one of the things that really stands out to me from President Frank, and I bet he would never remember that. And it's funny bringing up Elder Martin, but he's actually coming out here hopefully in a couple months and being able to connect with him after his podcast. That's one of the cool things about this podcast, is kind of getting some of us reconnected.
Yeah.
The only other experience I'll share in Inverness, and this is just another funny one because I'm thinking through, right, getting our haircuts, right? Like that's a regular thing. Some missionaries would cut their own hair. I ended up buying a pair of shears just to have on my mission. I think cut my own hair for a while, but we're all cheap and don't want to spend money on haircuts, so we get whoever's the most competent missionary to cut hair, right? So
Jeez.
Elder Peacock and Elder McCabe were up from Aberdeen, and Elder McCabe cut my hair. And while he's cutting my hair, the guard fell off. And
Oh,
so
no.
I had this huge gash in the back of my head. And so for 3 weeks or something like that, I had to have like this military haircut, like full buzz in the back. And I remember giving James a hard time about that. But what's funny is my wife is a cosmetologist, and my sisters both went to cosmetology school too. So I haven't had to pay for a haircut or went to a barber to get my haircut in like 12, 15 years.
Oh my gosh. Crazy.
Yeah.
It was because you had that poor military haircut from Elder McCabe.
Yep.
That was the result. Had to been.
Had to be. So that takes me up to I was with Elder Fissler for 6 weeks, and they actually said I was going to be staying in Inverness for another transfer, but 2 weeks into that transfer, got a call, and was going to be moving down back to the Paisley Stake to serve in Irvine. And that was a surreal experience because I had already spent 6 months there to start my mission in that Irvine ward. So I ended up in total spending, I think, 13 months in one ward.
Wow.
Which I never thought I'd be back, right? Like that's kind of the thing when you leave an area, you're like, okay, I'm moving on. But that was, and it was back to back, first 6 months and then last 7 or something like that. But was also really excited. Elder McConkey and Elder Martin had been there, and Elder McConkey actually got there. And I overlapped with him for 6 weeks before I went to Dumfries. And so I think McConkey and Magner might have been together while I was serving in Kilwinning. But yeah, anyways, that was kind of surreal going back to Irvine and essentially living in a different apartment, but being in the same ward for another 7.5 months. So I spent the rest of my mission there. I was with Elder Black at first, from Ireland, and then served with Elder Jensen. We served together for 4.5 months, which was pretty long. That was my longest companion for sure. And we were in the same group coming out. We'd been in the same district at the start of our mission, and then to serve together at the end and for that long a time was definitely one of the things that I look back with fondness of just my time serving with Elder Jensen, and then finished out my last 6 weeks with Elder Frainer. So yeah, and so at that point in time was the zone leader in the Paisley Stake, and that was again just a fun time. You talk about, it was like focus on member missionary work, and then a little bit of hammer time, which in my mind I think felt a little different, but was just how do we hold people accountable and really be involved with the zone as much as possible to help people progress and grow. Yeah, I guess I'll just go through and think a little bit. When I think of Elder Black, we were busy. Like, I think we had 4 or 5 baptisms in the 3 months that we were together.
Wow.
In a lot of involvement with the youth. I don't remember a lot about this, but I wrote about this. we actually went to young men on a young men's camp out, Elder Black and myself, which I don't like. Looking back, I'm like, did we really do that? But I think we had 2 or 3 investigators that were going to be there, and I'm sure we asked for permission. But looking back, I'm like, did we really go camping for a night when we were on our mission? Like that seems, I don't know, kind of.
I
You
did it.
too?
Yeah. I think it was like a ward camp out, and we got permission. And it was funny because it was I was serving with Elder Littlefield at the time, and the other companionship in the Dunfermline ward was Elder Pilkington and Brian Barber. So
Yeah.
2 of the missionaries from my MTC group and my companion, and it was the worst night of sleep I had on my mission because I slept in a sleeping bag that was probably made for someone that was a foot shorter than me, and I didn't have a pillow, and I'm pretty sure I slept in my clothes. Like there's no way I was getting any sense of comfort, but that was a unique experience. I never would have thought I would get to go camping on my mission, but it was fun.
Yeah, that's cool. Those are the main thing that come to mind when I think of Elder Black. Elder Jensen, man, I just love that man. He's got like contagious energy, and we had so much fun together. And I just remember him coming in. He just wanted to just help grow and be involved with the ward, and just such a love for the ward and the young men there. And having been there for so long, I feel like I got to know the ward really well. Like when I came back, I knew all of the leadership in the ward, from the bishopric and release site president, elders quorum president, and the ward mission leader, and so on. So, yeah, there was just a love for the gospel with Elder Jensen, and I can still remember to this day. And just him waking up and at 7:30 in the morning, belting hymns and singing along with the church tabernacle choir, and I don't know, it was just a lot of fun times. The one, there's 1 or 2 funny stories with Elder Jensen, but I'll save that for later, talking about one of our investigators. But yeah, just I don't know, just a love. And then the other thing I remember serving in Irvine was just the relationship with President Yates, the stake president there. He was in the Irvine ward, and had known him a little bit from before, but being able to work closely with him. And there was a few times he came on joint teaches with us to go visit different people, and he came to zone leader conference to talk to the Edinburgh, Paisley, and Glasgow zones, and I think we rode together or something like that. But just another one that I just love, that man and his leadership. I think 2 experiences that stand out to me. One time when we went out on visits, I think it might have been exchanges, because I think it was just me and him, and I think Elder Jensen might have been with someone else. But I remember we were going to see someone and they weren't home, and he randomly stopped someone on the road and was like, "Hey, do you know where Mary Jones lives? I think they're over in this area." And I think we had like a 5-minute conversation. And then after, I was like, "President Yates, who the heck is Mary Jones?" And he was like, "Oh, I have no idea. But now the next time that person runs into missionaries, he's not going to think that you're weirdos." And just, I don't know, just the way the comfort talking to people, and just kind of a boldness, and so on. The other one that I can think of with President Yates is another priesthood leadership meeting that stands out to me. He was talking about the importance of continuing to grow our testimonies, and talked about how so many times, really speaking of people in Scotland, when people are giving talks, they would say, "Oh, when I was on my mission," right? When I was on my mission, and telling story A, B, C, or D, and saying there's nothing wrong with having spiritual experiences, and you should have spiritual experiences on your mission. But what are you doing now to continue to have those spiritual experiences, and being able to have experiences now in your life that you're able to share on talks? And so that has stayed with me, and challenged me to continue to stay close to the Spirit, and continually striving to serve and be in situations where we're continuing to have those spiritual experiences. And we all do it, and we should do it, talk about the experiences that we have. But I just remember that standing out to me, especially in those closing months as you're preparing to go home from your mission. So
Yeah.
I think so. One of the other ones, as we're getting close to winding down in the mission, and there's two people that we taught there, and one of them I remember vividly praying at the end of my mission, saying, I'll go wherever you want me to go, but I hadn't had the experience of finding someone from lesson number 1 and teaching them all the way through and then getting baptized. I'd been a part of a number of different baptisms and taught different people, but I hadn't had that exact experience. But remember just saying, hey, I think I had 3 months left, and just, I'll go where you want me to go. If I need to leave Irvine, if you need me somewhere else, but I just really want to find and have that experience. And so I remember with Elder Jensen, I just remember being really busy, going to visiting different areas in the zone, and being busy with a little bit of a teaching pool that we had, not having a whole lot of time of finding. And so when we did, I always felt it was really crucial. So I remember going to one of the nicest neighborhoods in Irvine. It was a new development, and said, this is where we're going to knock doors tonight. We had 30 minutes or something like that. And it was the last door. It's always the last door, right? We were like, okay, we're going to do 2 more. And so it was the last door. We knocked on the door, and it was an Indian man named Surrender that answered. And I think he might've been a little intoxicated, but I remember we started talking about families and families being together forever, and something about what we said, he let us in right away. And that experience, meeting Surrender, knocking on his door, he had been separated from his wife and his kids for a little while. And I think just that message of we can be with our family again really hit home for him. And over the next couple months, he was Indian and he was Sikh, so he didn't know anything about Jesus. And so I remember teaching about Jesus and watching Finding Faith in Christ, and just having cool experiences with him. I remember after watching Finding Faith in Christ, after watching him saying, wait, and people still didn't believe him? Like, just a lot of experience in Scotland. You talk to Catholics or whatever it may be. And so it was just a cool experience seeing him, this light come into his life. And he got to the point where he stopped smoking and he stopped drinking. And he was successful. He had an Indian restaurant and owned petrol stations. He had a couple of them that he owned that he would work at. And so there was a couple times we would stop as we were going to Kilmarnock or something, and we'd stop by and he'd be working, and he'd be like, what do you want? Take whatever you want from the grocery store. Like, it's on me. And there was a couple times where we'd be coming over and he would say, hey, did you guys eat dinner yet? I'll order food from my Indian restaurant. And so that's one of my funny stories too. So he ordered food from his Indian restaurant, and Elder Jensen and I are teaching him at this point in time. And I think we did the lesson first, or gosh, we might have ate first. And I remember he had ordered these chilies or something, or jalapenos with the meal. And I remember Elder Jensen being like, how hot are these? And he'd be like, oh, they're pretty spicy. And Elder Jensen would be like, hey, I'll have a bite if you have a bite, Elder McLean. And they were probably like, I don't know, 3 inches long. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I probably took, I don't know, maybe a 1/2 inch bite, but Elder Jensen probably took 2 or 3 inches and ate the whole thing. and he was dying. Like, I think I was dying just from this little half inch, and Surrender didn't think anything of it. Like, he started laughing because Elder Jensen's like sweating at this point in time. And I think what made it worse, he had this yogurt, like Indian yogurt, but in the Indian yogurt was also like jalapenos or something. And so Jensen, to like cool it, was drinking this yogurt with jalapenos in it, and is like sweating, dying. And I think we still taught him a lesson after that.
Oh my gosh.
But like, he was not in a good spot. And the second we got in the car, I just remember the audience saying, "We need to go to the hospital."
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
His insides were burning.
His insides are burning. And we didn't end up going to the hospital, but I think the next day he felt it almost just as much. Oh, but that was that's just fun, it's just fun things. And just he's so animated, and Surrender was busting up too, because he could see that he was really uncomfortable. I was like, "Do you want milk? Like, do you want something?" And he's like, "No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Oh jeez.
Oh, but we continued to teach Surrender. Elder Jensen left and Elder Frainer came in, and we continued to teach Surrender. He ended up having one of his workers that worked in his petrol station, Billy, that was a referral from Surrender that we ended up teaching. And it got to the point where we had such a good relationship with him. He came to one of our zone conferences and did one of the role plays with missionaries, just talking about his experience. So it was just cool to develop that relationship with him. And he ended up getting baptized with Billy. He was probably 17 years old, worked in his gas station, and was in our area on the same day. And just a cool experience. And I can remember when we were leaving, I think I was getting ready to leave. President Yates had gone over to his house and was ordaining him to the Aaronic priesthood, I think, and a big thing for Indians, from my understanding with Surrender and Sikhs, was like religion was your family, like family and religion was like intertwined, and something along the lines of like, "Hey, now you have this new family." And so I remember at that point in time when I was leaving that there was something that didn't feel right for Surrender, and like feeling like he had abandoned his family. So I don't know the whole story, and I haven't even talked to Elder Frainer, but it'd be interesting to hear what happened to Surrender afterwards, because I don't know how long he ended up staying active because of some of those things. But I remember just the sweet experience of building that relationship and seeing him progress, and the light that came into his life, and he stopped drinking and smoking. I remember him paying tithing after he got baptized. And one of the cool things, I'd been home from my mission, I don't know if it was 6 months or a year, and I don't know how he got my number, but he randomly called me in the US, and I'm sitting in Arizona. I think I'd just gotten off work. And I was like, "Surrender, like, how are you?" And he talked about how he was back with his wife and his family, and how they kind of reconnected because he kind of changed his ways. And I know we all have different experiences, and there's a lot of people that get baptized and didn't stay active, but I know that his life was changed for the better because of our interactions and spending time together. So I remember that was one of the cool things. The end of my mission was that relationship with Surrender, and then also teaching Billy, who he referred to us, and him getting baptized as well. So that was definitely one of the fun memories from my last 6 months.
That's cool.
Let me see. Any other just quick hitters? Yeah, I think that last couple of weeks there was an experience where for Zone Leader Conference we went up to Pratt's Hill again, and that was a cool experience being up there with all the other zone leaders and kind of rededicating ourselves in the mission, and just the progress and growth that we saw at that point in time in the mission. Like, I know a lot of different people talked about it, but went from 107 or something to 230 or 240, and just the excitement that brought to the missionaries, to the members. It was just such a fun time. um and then the last 6 weeks with Elder Frainer, I just remember it went by really quick, and just having fun with him and teaching surrender and teaching Billy, and the relationship we had with the ward members and the young men there in specific with the wilds and so on. And then really to close up my time, my family ended up picking me up, got permission to come over, and so they picked me up from Irvine. And for some reason they came on a Sunday, and I wasn't being released till a Tuesday. So I remember they came to church on Sunday and we went to dinner that night. But my brother, actually, we got permission for him to like serve with us, to be with us that Monday that we went to district meeting and went street contacting. And just remember that being a cool thing to be able to share that with my brother, who was going to be getting ready to go on a mission. And just that it was a whirlwind going over and seeing all those names and families that you had gotten to know so well. And man, I know everyone feels this way, but I just love that place, man. I think about Scotland so much. There's a couple things that I still do to this day. My phone still is in military. You can't really see that, but my phone is still in military time, and that's because like
Wow.
I made a conscious decision that that's how time is in Scotland. And so I do that to just kind of create little connection with Scotland. I think, watching soccer. I don't know if you guys know this. Five Guys, you can get a chip buddy.
Uh-uh.
You just order their fries, and they give you a bun for free, and you put some brown sauce or A1 on it. So I don't know. I just so many so many fun things, and I really, there's a Elder Holland quote from a ways back talking about my mission, and it's exactly how I feel. That he says, I love my mission as I'm sure no young man has ever loved one before or since. And that is really how I felt. I have such a love and such a fondness. And that's one of the reasons I was excited to come on, is just to talk about and relive those memories. And for me to be able to have this documented, to be able to send to young men, or for my family here to hear, because when else am I going to spend an hour and a half talking about mission experiences? So that's one reason why it's been cool to listen to others and just be able to spend some time thinking through and preparing and thinking of Scotland, because that was a cool experience. The last thing I think I'll say is Elder Care came to one of our last zone conferences, and I remember I had written down one of the things he talked about was the Lord's University. Like this, uh, talking about BYU, Zack, but a lot of people call BYU the Lord's University. But he said the Lord's University is the mission field, and just talking about the experiences you have there and in those unique times. So it's been fun, and it's fun to relive, and it's fun to hear all these experiences other people have had. And we could have kept going for hours with all the stories of all the different places and so on. But I would say that would kind of wrap up my time in Scotland and those things.
No, it's been great, Joe. We've really enjoyed everything that you've shared. I'm curious because obviously you had that year after I was there, but what was your experience when the hammer time period came into the fray? How did you react to that?
It's funny. I've heard different people talk about this, and actually, looking back through my like study journal, I didn't even realize this, but I don't know who it was, but one of the assistants, when they came to our flat, had like gone through my personal journal, like my journal, and like had written like random notes about like how are you getting better. And
Hmm.
hammer time for me, I think it was it was more just the return and report function that I think we really tried to implement, and got to the point where we were talking to each of our district leaders on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. But I kind of had a hard time a couple times, like if we were to go do a flat visit to, I don't know, to make missionaries feel bad about some of their decisions or whatever it may be. So I think mine was a reduced view, and I think O'Brien and Martin came to our flat one time, and I think it was like a hammer time visit, and I just remember them like, I don't know, it just felt like let's just have a conversation. Like, what are we talking about? Like, so I think it was kind of downplayed for me, and maybe that was just my leadership style to a certain extent and working with our zone. But I'm sure someone would come on and tell about the terrible experiences that Elder McLean called them out for A, B, C, and D. But looking back, I just have these rose-colored glasses of everything.
I can't see you doing that. You're too forthright of a guy. You know, you want to say it as it is and how you feel, and you're not gonna put the rose-colored glasses on, like you said. I can't see you doing that. I was just curious what your experience was, because everybody had a different experience. Some people learned something from it on top of hating it, and you know what I mean. It was just a unique time in the mission.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say is I just remember the positive one that I think really came out was just the urgency. And I know there's been some similar experiences, but I remember the sisters in I think they were serving in Kilwinnie at the time, had a girl that was in Young Women's that was investigating the church, and there was really a holdup that she was waiting on her family. And I remember Elder Jensen, we went and visited the mom and just talked about her daughter and how she felt about the church and so on. And I don't remember how many days it was later, but we were like at the church or at a member's house and talking with the sisters and this girl about our experience, and it like eased her mind that her mom felt good about it. And so much so that like that night she got baptized.
Wow.
And like she'd already gotten to the point where she'd had all the lessons and had been coming to church, and it was just like this hang up. And her mom was there, so it wasn't like we were doing something behind anyone's back, but her mom was there, and Ward Mission Leader was there, and we went and filled up the font, and like that urgency, and like, well, okay, well, if there's no more barriers, it's like, and I think she was even like, okay, like, let's do it, let's get baptized. It's like, yeah, great. Let's do it. So that was one of, I think, the really cool things that was this urgency for the work. And there was definitely times that it went overboard in hearing some experiences, but when done the right way, there was definitely some cool things in helping people progress, and just that focus on finding people that wanted to progress and grow.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, you had a great list of amazing missionary companions, and if you're in touch with any or many of them, we hope that you'll invite them to come and participate, because we'd love to have many of them. I mean, I'm just looking through our list of those that you've named, and we've only talked to Matt Fissler so far. So
yeah,
we got our work cut out for us.
Yeah, definitely some good companions. The other ones that just names that I was thinking of, I don't know if you would ever do members, but Douglas Yates and Mark Veal, I would love to just hear some of their experiences working with missionaries. The other one, and this would be more timeline of after us, but Johnny Kuhn is another one. He's a Gilbert boy that I think, right, we're talking, right, Jack we trade places, and then we were a year later. I think Johnny Kuhn was like, when I left, he was coming in like that exact time. So that would be another one that came to my mind of someone would be cool to hear from.
So the missionary who we talked to last Sunday, Andrew Bonin. He actually served with Johnny Coon. So hopefully that will be coming out this evening, early morning tomorrow, and hopefully he'll share it and get it in front of him, and hopefully we can get in touch with John, because it sounds like he was a good one from his experience too. So
the cool thing in talking a little bit about Johnny, and I'm sure some of these later that, talking about Hammer Time, I remember Johnny talking about it going from Hammer Time to just this charity and love that it kind of developed and grew through with President Fredrick. So definitely cool to hear some of those experiences, some people after me, and how that transition changed. And I think Elder Fissler talked a little bit about that too, of just kind of that natural transition of things. But
well, good. Well, Joe, thank you again for making time for us in your hectic schedule. I know that working in college athletics, this is a busy time of year. So really thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight.
No, it's been fun. It went by quick. So it's been fun. Lots of good experiences. Appreciate you guys inviting me and putting this platform together for us to talk about all those good times in Scotland, and food and fun and the spiritual experiences and so on.
Yeah. And like I said, as you're inviting people, if they, want us to reach out to them, we'd be happy to. Or if they want to reach out to us, the S.E.M podcast at 51spylaw.com email address is there, or they can go to the 51spylaw.com website, and there's a contact sheet on there that they can fill out, and we'll get in touch with them and get them on the schedule. But more than anything, we love you. We're grateful that we have you as our brother in Scotland. And so thanks again for taking the time. We love you.
Love it. Thanks, Zach. Thanks, Jack.
All right, Joe. Cheerio, mate.